Hello and welcome. This is FIDE Master and FIDE Trainer Vedant Goswami. Today, I'm going to share a game of one of my favorite players, the Russian Grandmaster and World Champion, Anatoly Karpov. I studied a lot of his games when I was active player, and his style particularly attracted to me because it's like purely positional, and you can actually learn a lot about the position by seeing his games. So for today, I have selected a game which was played in 1962. His opponent is Dmitry Piskunov, and the game features the Alekhine's defense. So we'll stop a bit and analyze a bit at the particularly the turning points and the instructive moments. So let us go. So Karpov is white here. It starts with e4 and f6, e5 and d5, c4, and b6 and d4, which is if white also plays f4, this will transpose into the very famous and aggressive the four pawns attack. Black plays d6, countering on in the center. White takes, and nc3, nc6, a3. This is a move I actually don't understand very clearly. It's kind of a very slow move. I'm sure white has other options like nf3 or bishop d3. nf3 usually I would say white might be avoiding to avoid this pin, and waiting for this move until black commits his bishop first. Okay, so that is a possibility, but anyway, interesting move. Does control some squares, stops nb4, at certain moments. So bishop f5, and of course, both of the sides have multiple possibilities at each step. So bishop f5, white plays bishop e3 and g6. And Karpov continues with bishop d6, bishop d3. This looks, I don't know, slightly strange to me, because bishop e2 also is a possibility, and nf3 is also one, because usually the side with some space advantage tries to keep more pieces on the board. So offering an exchange is slightly interesting, but I cannot figure out the exact reason. I'm no Karpov for sure. So queen d7 and knight comes to e2. So one of the advantages of this knight development here is that the pin is not possible. Bishop g7, castles, and b3. What I particularly like about the game till now is, white is going so slow, very easy, and just constructing his position instead of, just trying to throw his pieces for some sort of attack. So that is very impressive and very interesting indeed. The very slow build-up of position. Rook a to d8 was the move. Queen c2, and inviting black to make a decision about the bishop on f5, because now white is threatening to take there twice and destroying the pawn structure. Bishop g4 is not much of an option because of f3, and we are back at the same thing. Bishop e6, of course, would be a blunder because of the push on d5. So ne7 is possible, maybe. And knight e7 is a possibility if black wants to do that. But in the game, black chose bishop into d3, queen into d3, ne7. Okay. Now, if you have heard about Karpov and about the quality of his games and what his strengths were, you would have heard that he was in particular extremely strong in prophylactic play. Now, what is prophylactic play basically is when you figure out opponent's intention, and if you see ways to stop that, you do that. So white is extremely aware of the opportunities of the move in e7, because knight is coming to f5, then it will put kind of uncomfortable pressure on d4 while also attacking e3. So white plays the very interesting knight g3, stopping uh, in f5. Okay, so in today's age, I think black would have simply replied h5. That is an option. I'm not sure how Karpov would have replied to that. So c6, black played c6, and now very simple, very important, rook f to e1. Development of all the pieces, bringing all the pieces into the game, hallmark of very strong players. Black plays d5, white chooses not to simplify there. Of course, cd5 would be a positional blunder, giving an excellent outpost on d5 to the black pieces and leaving white with a isolated queen pawn, which comes under heavy attack from all the black pieces. So yeah, a normal recapture would have been a positional blunder. So white plays the correct move c5, gaining some space on the queen side. Black and knight c8. And like I keep saying, you should try to guess the moves which, the great player, the grandmaster of whose game we are watching, to develop your intuition. That is one of the best ways to develop your intuition. So at each step, try to guess, and then you can compare the move which you wanted to play to the move which was actually played. That helps a lot over time. White played rook e2. So the e file being the only open file, white is planning to put both his rooks on the e file, doubling the rooks and getting them ready for any action. Black plays f5. Now f5 is a very committal move because it weakens lot of potential squares on the e file where white is already doubling up. So now this is a very typical move which is made by inexperienced players. So black does create a threat for one move. So f4 being a threat, but a threat that is very easily parried. And after that, the only thing that is left for black is to deal with the negative consequences of the pawn push, which is the lot of weaknesses on the e file. So white plays bishop f4. A very good move, preventing the pawn fork and opening the rook file. King f7 and rook a to e1. Rook f to e8, and again a very instructive move played by white. Bishop e5. Now, if you see, the bishop for the black pieces is the only active piece on the board, which was even attacking anything. It was in contact with d4. So white immediately challenges the only active piece. So that once that bishop is gone, the quality of the black position goes down significantly. So black plays ng8, and now I would again ask you to take a moment to figure out the white move at this position, because if you do, the positional understanding in your games will improve significantly, because this next maneuver is very typical, very important, very simple for a player like Karpov to find, but also highlights the key aspects of the position. White plays nf1. The knight is going to e5, the wonderful outpost, which is forever to be, uh, what should I say, forever left in white's control because of the movement of the f pawn. If the f pawn would have been on f7, knight e5 would have not such a big issue because simply f6 and you can push the piece. So that's the problem with pawn movements. The pawn controls certain squares, and once you move them, they can no longer do that. So nf1, a very brilliant move, a very typical move, a very easy move for a strong player to find, but which highlights the key things in the position, which is the e5 square. Black plays nf6, knight d2, knight e4, bishop into g7, king g7, and of course taking uh, on e4 would be a very bad move because black will simply improve his pawn structure, close the e file, and actually open the f file for his rooks. So white goes nf3, rook e7, b4, rook d2 e8, and knight e5. And the plan is simple, that the knight on e4 will be pushed by f3, while it will take a lot of effort to remove the knight on e5. And this knight is the only piece which can be challenging this, and it has to find some unique way to go to f7. I'm not exactly sure. So maybe maneuver like this, and this to finally challenge the. And in that time, white can also improve his position further. So queen goes to d8 and f3, knight takes, queen takes, and rook e6. And white plays a very typical Karpovian move, g3. Again, at every movement, reducing the options for the opponent, preventing the f4 push, maybe the jump of the queen to the h4 square. Very slow. White knows he is in total control. He has a much better position, so does not hurry and improve the position. This type of play is psychologically very tough on the opponent because it basically highlights the hopelessness of the opponent position. Very easy to make mistakes if you are the defender in these type of positions. Queen c7, queen d2, improving the position of the queen to get an opportunity to either g5 square or f4. Knight e7, finally black starts basically the knight maneuver. Ultimately, if black has to do anything or have a hope to have a decent game, the knight on e5 has to be challenged, and only the knight can do it, and that is from f7. So a possible maneuver might be this, which I also pointed out earlier. So why? Karpov goes knight d3, and black is forced to capture, but unfortunately now he is in a pin. And that is what happens basically when you're better developed. You can predict opponents' plans and take action to stop them. That is the advantage of usually better development. So black plays h5. Now the black rook is in a bad pin. The knight cannot move, and it is very difficult to even suggest a move for black. So Karpov infiltrates with queen e6. Not many options, not many moves for black to play because the knight is jumping over queen, and there are so many threats. Black plays h4 and resigned after a very nice move. If you want, just take a second to figure out what was the move, and the move is queen d6. A very simple but very powerful move, forcing an immediate resignation because queen takes queen, pawn takes, and black ends up losing a piece. Any other option is also not available. So a very simple, a very instructive game, particularly so after black played f5 and weakened his position. After that, Karpov's play was exemplary with all these maneuvers from bishop f4 to bishop e5, exchanging the black bishop, and then maneuvering the knight to e5, and then putting the knight to e5 and pushing the knight away with f3. So very exemplary, a very nice game. I hope you enjoyed it. And it was a learning experience with all those nice maneuvers, the total control of the game. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.